Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fazana Zalani and my study number is 2500004018. And now I'm gonna storytelling about the story of the Rengas Dengklok incident. I would like to take you all back in the time, especially the middle of August 1945. This was one of the most intense moments in Indonesia history. Followed with heated debates and even a darling kidnapping. Just one day before Indonesia declared its independence, we know the history even as the Rengas Dengklok incident. Let us define into the story. Our story begins as World War II was searching its dramatic end. On August 40, 1945, a massive piece of news shocked the entire world. Japan officially declared an unconditional surrender to the island force after two of their major cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were destroyed by atom bomb. In Indonesia, the Japanese military tried their best to keep his defeat a secret from the public in order of maintaining control and avoid chaos. However, there was a group of, of young Indonesia the group of young Indonesia freedom fighters who were incredibly smart and sharp. They constantly monitored the global news using hidden radio, which were strictly banned by the Japanese authorities. Through this illegal radio broadcast, youth leaders like Sultan Jahir and his peers heard the news that Japan had fallen. This news spread like a wildfire among the young in Jakarta. They instantly realized that a major vacuum of power was happening in Indonesia. Japan had lost, but the alliance force had not yet arrived to take over. Immediately, a sharp difference of opinions arose between two groups of freedom fighters, the young group and the older group. The young group, led by energetic figures like Cheryl Saleh, Sukarni, and Wikana, wanted Indonesia to declare its independence right at the moment. They argued that Indonesia must seize this perfect momentum before the alliance force arrived and tried to colonize the country again. However, this idea rejected by the older group, which include prominent leaders like Bung Karno and Bung Hatta. They were mature leaders who believed in taking highly calculated risky. The older group argued that independence should not be a design in a rush. They want to discuss it officially throughout a meeting with the PPKI, the Preparatory Communication for Indonesia Independence. Bung Karno, for Bung Karno, this step was crucial to ensure that Indonesia independence would be legal and recognized by the world and to avoid bloody conflict with the Japanese army, who really still heavy army at the time. This difference of opinion created instant tension. On the night of August 15, 1945, the young group held an emergency meeting in Jakarta. They felt deeply frustrated by a conscientious attitude of the older group. Of the young fighter worried that if Indonesia wanted along or followed the official PPKI path, the alliance would view Indonesia independence merely as a gift for Japan, rather than a genuine struggle from the Indonesia people. From the emergency meeting, a very bold and risky plan was born. They agreed to take Bung Karno and Bung Hatta out of Jakarta. Their goal was not to harm them, but to protect these two forbidden fathers from any Japan influence or pressure. Right before dawn on August 16, 1945, at around 3 a.m., The plan was executed. A, a group or armored yacht arrived at a Bung Karno house with a highly coordinated tactic. They pick up Bung Karno, his wife Ibu Fatmawati, and their baby son Gantar, and Bung Karno Hatta. The two of the leaders were then taken out of Jakarta, heading east. Their destination was the small town in Karawang region of West Java, Kales Rengas Dengklok. This location was chosen for a very specific reason. Rengas Dengklok was relatively isolated and far from the main Jakarta Cirebon highway. Furthermore, the area was fully controlled by the PETA force, the Homeland Defense Army, whose members were young soldiers deeply loyal to the independence movement. This guarded the Bung Karno and Bung Hatta would be completely safe from the Japanese military patrol. Upon arriving at Rengas Dengklok, Bung Karno and Bung Hatta were brought to be a modest house owned by a local resident of Chinese descent named Dijiwao Kieseong. This house was chosen because it was hidden near the right bank and the owner was highly supportive of the revolution. Inside the wooden house, throughout that hot day, the heavy debates conditioned the young conservative pushers and tried to convince Bung Karno and the Indonesian people and the PETA force very fully ready to take up arms to support the proclamation. Despite the heavy pressure, Bung Karno maintained his composure and refused to make a reckless declaration without proper planning. While the situation in Rengas Dengklok was highly intense, the situation back in the Jakarta was filled with panic. The Japanese authorities became suspicious because Bung Karno and Bung Hatta had suddenly vanished from their homes. A, a key leader from the older group, Ahmad Sudarjo, was busy searching for his two close friends. After conducting a careful investigation and communication with a young youth leader named Vikana, he finally discovered that Bung Karno and Bung Hatta were being held in Rengas Dengklok. Without wasting any time, Ahmad Sudarjo rose to Rengas Dengklok that very afternoon. Upon his arrival, he immediately entered the negotiation room with the representation of the youth group. What followed was a truly historic negotiation. Ahmad Sudarjo tried his best to convince the youth of the proclamation would definitely happen. But Jakarta was the only proper place because all the documents and facilities were ready there. To confidence the young fighter were still skeptic, Ahmad Sudarjo made an extraordinarily humiliating promise. He puts his own life on the line. He firmly stated that if the proclamation of Indonesia independence was not held by Augustus 17, 1945 at 10 a.m., 10 very late, the youth were allowed to shoot him dead. Hearing a sincere and brave ultimate promise from Ahmad Sudarjo, the head of the youth held it mounted. They finally believed the older group was completely serious and was not being controlled by the Japan. Based on the historic agreement, Bung Karno and Bung Hatta were finally allowed to return to Jakarta that night. The group of Japanese naval officials would deeply sympathize with Indonesia's struggle. Admiral Mida, located on Imam Bonjol Street, Jakarta, it was the very house of the next of proclamation was drafted until dawn. Right before it was officially read on the morning August 17, 1945. My friends, from the story of the Ragnarok incident, we can learn a very valuable lesson. This even teach us about the true meaning of unity, courage, and wisdom the youth group show us an example of boring patience, boldness to break barrier and the information of sense alternative. Of the hand, the older group show us the information of claims, careful calculation, and smart diplomacy. The combination of the course of the yacht and the wisdom of the older leader is the ones finally successfully Voidly or nation to the gates of freedom. Without the heavy pressure is Rengas Denglok, our nation history may have taken a completely different path. This history living proof all the Indonesia independence was never given from another country, but the proud result of hard work, certified, and the absolute definition of our people. That is the history of the Rengas Denglok incident that I can share for my video segment today. I hope the story is good. Thank you.